Story 1. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I lost my grandfather several years ago. He was the first of my grandparents to die, and the rest sort of fell like dominoes. I was out of town when he passed. He'd been in the hospital for a while, but stable, so his passing was unexpected. My father called me early in the morning and told me, "Come home. Papa's gone." I drove home a complete mess, wiped tears away, and stood strong for my dad, helped with the arrangements, and supported everyone the best I could. Not long after, my grandmother's Alzheimer's got much worse, and she followed him in death. The night before she died, she looked at the ceiling and smiled so big, saying, "Jesus and Arthur are here. They're here for me." She passed quietly with the family present, and then the rest of us were called in to mourn and assemble as a family. A couple of years later, my maternal great-grandmother, a true diamond of a woman, fell and broke her hip. She was closing in on 100, and ultimately just made up her mind to let go. We understood, and we took turns sitting with her until it was time. The last time I saw her, she told me that she was ready to go, and imparted her last words on me. I leaned in to hug her, and I asked her for a favor. "When you get home, will you tell Papa that I'm sorry I wasn't there?" She just smiled and nodded, and gave me a sly little wink. We cried a little, and I went home. About 3 in the morning, she passed away. Fast forward a little over a year later, there was a local paranormal convention in town, and some ghost hunter type was doing a campfire stories panel, with people contributing their own. I sat there listening, and it was all pretty cool. The panel was uneventful. It ended, and I lingered for a while. I was chatting with one of them, who gave me a copy of their book, and a heavyset guy who had been sitting on the panel earlier came up to me, and he said, "I really need to tell you something. I was going to leave, but I can't leave until I tell you this, and I hope it doesn't freak you out." So I told him to go on, and he looked at me and said, "There's an older gentleman behind you, tall and thin, a white button-down shirt, khaki slacks, glasses, a little bit of stubble on a very strong jaw. He's been with you since you came in here. He wants me to tell you that it's okay. He's very insistent, and he wanted me to tell you. He wants you to know it was okay." I reached into my pocket and I pulled out my wallet, and I showed him a picture of my grandparents at a younger age, but still very much themselves. I asked him if that was who he saw. He went white and looked over my shoulder and then back at the photo and said, "Yes." Story 2. Dreams. When I was young, I had a recurring dream. The dream had no real story behind it. It was just odd little clips of my life so far. The dream always ended the same way. It would just kind of fade to black, and I'd hear voices. One saying, "I just had the weirdest dream," and the female voice saying, "What about?" The first voice would then go on to talk about what I had dreamed, and at that point, I would wake up. So about 8 months ago, at least 30 years after I'd had the dream the last time, it was the weirdest thing. I could remember all those little clips, most of which I had long since forgotten about. I felt the overwhelming joy of being able to recall all those lost childhood memories. The feelings were so intense. It was like being so happy I could cry, and I had never felt that way before. But the end of the dream was different this time. This time, instead of fading to black and hearing voices, I just woke up. I was laying there feeling confused about this dream. So I rustled my wife awake, and I said to her, "I just had the weirdest dream." And she replied, "What about?" I was awake, playing out the ending of my childhood dream. Everything I said to her over the next minute or two was to describe the dream was actually happening as I heard it when I was having the dream back when I was a child. It was like this weird case of deja vu. The next morning after the dream, I was already starting to question myself about whether I actually had all those dreams when I was young, or whether this was something invented in my mind. But if I did have them, was I somehow peering into the future? I'm all about logic and science. I don't believe in ghosts or the supernatural, or even God for that matter, really. I believe there's an answer for everything, but I don't have an answer for this. Story 3. Kids these days. I was in my first year of university, in a completely new city and new surroundings. One evening, my friend and I decided to take a trip to the mall. It was 8 p.m., and we got to the bus that my friend claimed would take us to the mall. Well, that bus ended up at an empty bus terminal, and it was 10 o'clock. We waited and we waited for another bus back. There was no one there but us. A while later, an old man walked by and told us that since it was so late, another bus wouldn't be coming for an hour or so. He told us to turn around and walk down the road, and we'd find a bus stop in the middle where a bus would be coming soon. We followed his instructions and entered the single-lane road with tall trees on either side. There's only a few street lamps, making the area very dimly lit. The road was sort of built on a slant. Our bus stop was in the middle, so we could see all the way up the road and down the road, and it was a single-lane road. All we could see was the road and trees on either side for at least half a mile on each side. We're waiting and we're waiting. My phone battery dies. My friend, she forgot hers in her dorm room. We were thinking that we must have missed the buses, and one wouldn't be coming. We started to really panic. Then, as we're waiting, I turned around to see 2 kids with backpacks walking down the road. I was relieved to see them, and so was my friend. When they were close by, I asked them if they knew of any buses coming. These kids were maybe teenagers, 13, 14. One boy, one girl. Both had backpacks. I say, "Hey, do you know if there's any buses coming?" And the boy says, "Hey, let me check." Pulls out his phone, walks towards the bus stop sign, but it's empty and doesn't say anything about time or bus stop number, just a picture of a bus. I say, "Hey, the timings aren't there. There's no number or text or anything." The boy, still looking at his phone, says, "Oh, it's okay. Your bus will be here in 10 minutes. Meanwhile, during this conversation, my friend started talking to the girl. The girl says, "Hey, were you guys from the university?" And my friend says, "Yeah, we just started there. What about you?" The girl says, "Oh, yeah, we're in school. We're just going back home from school." After the boy told me the bus time, I turned my head to tell my friend this. I turned my head back, and the boy was gone. Completely gone. The girl and the boy were nowhere to be found. I literally looked away for a couple seconds, max. We looked up and down the road, in the road, by the trees. They were just gone. How could they get away so quickly? Needless to say, this scared both of us, and we stood there terrified until our bus arrived. It was the last bus, and it arrived at 12:17. We know this because we asked the bus driver the time when he arrived. I asked my brother about the area sometime later. I didn't tell him what happened to it. He said there was a graveyard right there. And then it hit me. What would 2 13-year-olds be doing out in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, supposedly coming back from school? I don't really believe in paranormal activity, but I can't seem to find a logical explanation for this one. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and until next time, bye!